to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, are you familiar with the Map of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins? His research led to his line of reasoning that sets the stage to comprehend the nature of the collective consciousness. That way, you can drill down to understand your own. Next, it's imminent that Earth will experience a pole shift soon. And here's some compelling evidence from Ben Davidson at Space Weather News. This is a cosmic event associated with the upcoming rise in Earth's consciousness. Then, Scanner Guy 1968 has some other video captures that I resonated with. They show multiple instances of craft in the sky. It's easy to pick out the airplanes in the clip as their navigation lights cause the flashing you see as they cross the sky. That's very different from the huge orbs that seem to flash as though powering up just before disappearing. And finally, want to see your aura? Here is an excellent resource to help you understand the nature of your entire being, including your physical and non-physical bodies.
Describing human consciousness needs to be done if we are to attain to a higher understanding of who we are collectively. Charts, images, diagrams, and explanations have been put forth by humans across the eons, all attempting to visualize and depict what it is they were seeing when it comes to the human anatomy in this dimension and beyond. While the current scientific explanation works with the material human form, a wonder to behold in its own right, a great many scientists and mystics alike have also determined to describe what exists beyond the physical. You're probably familiar with some of the basics here. If we were to attempt to map out the complete human energy field, you'd see chakras running up the spinal column with many meridians and lesser chakras across the body too. Emanating out from the body would be a large toroidal field connected with the heart, which would encompass the layers of the aura, which includes the mental body, the emotional body, astral body, and causal body, among a few others. Primarily here we are concerned with the physical, astral, and causal bodies, which make up our soulful existence across the three great planes of our multidimensional reality, which we can term as the material universe, the astral universe, and the causal universe. Beyond the material, the energetic nature of the astral and causal realities are significantly more subtle than anything we can easily perceive today. We must consider them even finer and more subtle than any atomic frequency, which is why we cannot find these realms with modern instruments. However, our bodies are designed to access these places, but which only comes through personal mastery of our body of consciousness. Today, many people have documented their journeys within the astral through the art of astral projection, or have experienced them in other ways, such as through near-death experiences or potent psychedelic journeys. The human body is said to be composed of 35 divinely orchestrated thoughts, 19 of which form the astral body, and 16 elements of which are then materialized as a result, making up the physical form. The 19 astral idea elements are intelligence, ego, feeling, mind, the 5 instruments of knowledge, which are the subtle powers behind the physical sense organs of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, as well as the 5 instruments of action, the powers for the abilities to procreate, excrete, talk, walk, and exercise manual skill, and 5 instruments of life force, those empowered to perform crystallizing, assimilating, eliminating, metabolizing, and circulatory functions in the body. The last 5 mentioned are the very same as the 5 types of prana we discuss in the spirit science episode called Types of Energy. Together, these 35 ideas are all created initially in thought through divine intelligence at the level of the causal body, which is the first body that houses the soul as it comes into existence from the indivisible spirit. This wisdom was passed on and given to mankind by Mahavatar Babaji and his students, and we express gratitude to the Self-Realization Fellowship for helping to publish the material in so many ways. The human body's energetic structure can also be mapped in other ways, such as through astrology or human design. But for now, let us take this conversation to another level. Just perceiving this map does not do as much for us as we might think. We need a usable pathway to ascend through our present understanding and into enlightenment, and that is where the work of Dr. David Hawkins comes in. He is a legendary psychiatrist, physician, researcher, spiritual teacher, and lecturer. He has an MD and a PhD, and for his work on the map of consciousness, received a royal knighting by the Danish crown. This map he is so well known and respected for demonstrates the scales of various levels of consciousness from the absolute lowest places where one can exist, shame and despair, all the way to full enlightenment. This is a very powerful chart and pathway diagram based on a numerical scale between 20 and 1,000, which calibrate to the different levels of consciousness. He explains that the critical response point in the scale of consciousness calibrates at the level 200, which is the level associated with integrity and courage. All attitudes, thoughts, feelings, associations, entities, or historical figures below that level of calibration make a person go weak. Those that calibrate higher make subjects go strong, meaning that through muscle testing and other testing methods, one can actually identify their body, their muscles, and their minds becoming weaker or stronger. This is the balance point between weak and strong attractors, between negative and positive influence. He therein dubs the difference between strong and weak attractor fields as power and force. Power is the alignment of our thoughts and actions with our highest values and principles, and it is characterized by feelings of love, joy, and peace. Force, on the other hand, is the use of manipulation or coercion to get what we want, and it is associated with negative emotions such as fear, anger, and aggression. Power is the more effective and positive approach to achieving our goals, and it can lead to greater fulfillment and well-being. But today, many of us have been conditioned to think that force, controlling others, is power. But force is a false material level that always has to be backed up by a reason. True power comes from the spirit and is attained through personal development and spiritual practices. At the levels below 200, the primary impetus is personal survival, although at the very bottom of the scale, the zone of hopelessness and depression, even this motive is lacking. All levels below 200 are destructive of life in both the individual and society level at large. All levels above 200 are constructive expressions of power. The decisive level of 200 is the fulcrum that divides the general areas of force and power. And as one crosses the boundary between negative and positive influence into courage, the well-being of others becomes increasingly important. By the 500 level, the happiness of others emerges as the essential motivating force. The high 500s are characterized by interest in spiritual awareness for both oneself and others, and by the 600s, the good of mankind and the search for enlightenment are the primary goals. From 700 to 1000, life is dedicated to the salvation of all of humanity. Dr. Hawkins also describes that for many people, they will spend an entire lifetime and barely move 1 point up the chart. Others may do much better, rising very quickly towards a more enlightened consciousness, especially if they are focused and committed to their spiritual development. But such miracles are far more rare in the world. But maybe times are changing though, and humanity is going through an evolutionary leap.
One of the most difficult to believe aspects of the Earth disaster cycle, which will reset in the next 25 years, is the Earth flipping over. But alas, you cannot explain the evidence without it, and the physics says it's possible. We have shared many times the new orientation of Earth after the flip. This is how our planet will look and rotate in the aftermath of the catastrophe. Old polar regions at the equator, new poles near India and South America, and continent-sized tsunamis as it moves there. We have described in detail that our preferred theory for this is a crustal unlocking from the mantle in the solar micronova event. Induction breaks the thermoelectric bond between them, and the crust slides free. But we have also gone over and do fully recognize the possibility of another alternative, the Jennebekov effect, the tennis racket theorem, or second axis theorem. In fact, despite our preference for unlocking the crust to be this mechanism, We made 2 videos on the Jenna-Bekoff effect in 2019, 5 years ago. Given the theory's recent resurgence into the internet, we figured it's time for a quick review for all of you here. So here is where this begins, the spinning object in space. This can be done with any object spun around an axis that is not symmetrical, like a tennis racket or a hammer. There are periods of stability and rotation punctuated by a rapid flip, and then a recapture of stability for a while before another flip. Now, this concept was the focus of a video by Veritasium. Very cool channel, but he got this one wrong, because his entire premise was that this couldn't possibly apply to the Earth because we don't have the same dynamics and structure. He said that Earth is symmetrical about our spinning axis, and well, that is just not true. If Earth looked like this, actually looked like this inside, then okay, maybe. But this oversimplified view of the Earth is utterly false. And while for many purposes it is okay to just think of the Earth as a stable, spinning, symmetrical sphere, this case is not one of them. Not only do we have an imperfect surface, but the same goes as you head downward through the crust and below. The sphere is actually a slightly oblate spheroid, bulged at the equator. Our shape is further complicated by an ever-changing nature. Things like what you're seeing here tug and stretch and crunch the planet, making our asymmetric reality around the rotational axis a dynamic animal. Even our orbit around the Sun, which takes us from 7 degrees south of the solar equator in March to 7 degrees north in September, and our axis tilt relative to the Sun changing throughout the year as we orbit, further complicate this issue and take us further from the symmetry that is needed to nullify this hypothesis. But more importantly, 2 ultraconductive structures, the LLSVPs, protrude from the core like handlebars or the cross-section of that T-handle we saw spinning in space at the start of the video. These are just the grandest of the non-homogeneous underground, and the others are vastly more numerous. Folks, in order to scientifically say the Jenna-Bekoff effect cannot apply to Earth, everything I just described, from the equatorial bulge to eccentricity to the underground structures, would have to be forgotten and ignored. We just can't do that if we want to properly answer the question. One of the best examples of this reality is the gravitational maps of the globe. These tell us that much is going on inside that is not reflected in the near spherical outside, and all of it tells us that rotational instabilities can occur. The recent discovery of the bulged and lopsided core of the Earth, just another example. In fact, there is not one single geodynamic or geophysical trait of our planet that nullifies the flip possibility. In fact, they all make it plausible. I'd like to now give a shout out to the ethical skeptic. He and I are not doing the same discussion or theory in our work, but yeah, there's certainly overlap. His recent examination of the Jenna-Bekoff effect is pretty impressive, and even includes evidence I missed, evidence I never thought to look for, starting to be convinced that what we see at the Great Pyramids is erosion from the very floods we describe being from the last flip of the Earth. What's more, his 104-degree shift is not that far off from our hypothesized 90-degree flip, and if he's right about 104 degrees, that actually still makes the evidence I've shown many times fit. Anywhere from about 75 to 105 degrees can work, actually. I just went with what Major Maynard White gave us from the classified Pentagon documents from 75 years ago, the 90 degrees. Alas, what we can say today is that I do still prefer the crustal unlocking mechanism, but I cannot deny that this is a second workable solution to the evidence that the planet flips over. It's happened before and it's about to happen again.
In this video, we talk about our 7-body system. And we'll bust that myth that we are only our physical body. And if you stay around until the end of the video, we'll give you a little experimentation of how you can see the etheric body with your own eyes. In the last video, we talked about something called prana. Prana there is no actual definition in English for prana, but the nearest definition is the vital current or vital energy of the body. So to understand the prana, we have to understand that there is more to us than this physical body. So let's talk about the 7-body system, and we'll focus primarily on the etheric body, but we'll still touch up on all the bodies. So the first one we're going to talk about is the most obvious, which you're very familiar with, is your physical body. Now, unfortunately, in West, we are conditioned to think that we are only our physical body and there is nothing beyond our physical body. Well, in the East, they say the physical body is composed of 5 elements, which is earth, water, fire, ether, and space. And we have 5 senses associated with the physical body: the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of touch, smell, and taste. And all these senses are outward driven, which means I can see you, you can see me, but I cannot roll my eyes inside and see myself. Similarly, if I do this, I can hear that sound easily, but there is so much sounds going on inside, like the heartbeat, but I can't hear it. Similarly, if you touch me, I can feel the touch, but there's so much blood circulating throughout the body and I cannot feel that blood circulation. And similar with the other senses. So the idea of meditation is to take these senses and divert them inside. And that's when we'll go into the journey of discovering our other bodies. So the second body is called pranic body, very important one. Why? Because it's an exact replica of your physical body. Pranic body is also called pranamaya kosha. And this is the closest energy body to the physical body. In recent days, through Kirlian photography, you can see clearly that there is aura around the body. And this aura is part of your etheric body. The etheric body extends to 1 to 2 inches beyond the physical body, and it pulsates at a certain frequency. This is called the aura of a person, an electromagnetic energy field that surrounds us all. From humans to animals, even objects, everything has aura. Now you must have felt a positive or a negative vibe from somebody when you get close to them without knowing them. Now that's called the etheric body or the aura of a person. You just have a feeling about them. You are actually reading their aura. And due to etheric body's close proximity, it's deeply connected to your physical body. It has ties to your physical health and all the body sensations, including pain and pleasure. And now scientists are discovering that each part of our physical body has an equal replica, a copy in the etheric body. The etheric body is where you feel all the desires, including your hunger or your sexual desires. And that's why sometimes you still feel hungry after you've fed the physical body because the etheric body is depleted. But on the other hand, there are some people who haven't eaten much, but they still don't feel hungry because their etheric body is vibrant. So before we go deeper into the etheric body and how the physical traumas are created psychosomatically, let's talk about the other bodies. The third one is called emotional body. And this, of course, is associated with our feelings. It is more subtle in nature than the etheric body. This body is 1 to 3 inches from the physical body. Colors depending on what kind of emotion the person is feeling. Is it love or joy or excitement? You must have heard this expression, red from rage, green from envy, and blue for calm. So all these colors are actually seen from the clairvoyance at the emotional body. The fourth one is called mental body, and mental is not just the brain. There's a whole mind inside the body, and these thoughts are picked up from this mental body. So there are thoughts literally hovering around in the mental body, and these are not even our thoughts. Sometimes we feel that these are our thoughts, but these are just thoughts there, and we happen to pick it up according to the frequency we're vibrating in. If we are vibrating at a higher frequency, then we'll pick up higher thoughts. And if we are vibrating at a lower frequency, and if you want to know more about the frequencies and vibration, you can read this beautiful book called Power versus Force. So for now, just remember that the mental body is the fourth body, and the thoughts in the mental body can be easily seen by people who are trained, like clairvoyants. And all the conflicts are actually in the mental body. And then comes the astral body. So just one point to note here is that the physical body, the etheric body, the emotional body, and mental body are all physical in nature. Even thoughts are physical in nature. But these are more subtle aspects of the physicality. So as we go through the different body system, we go from our gross to subtle bodies, and then we go to non-physical bodies, beyond the physical, which is where astral body comes in. Astral body is still a transition to the non-physical body. So the astral body, of course, has a different dimension, different plane, which is the astral plane, which is where we can go when we sleep. We can do astral travel if we consciously go to sleep. And I have a lot of videos on Meditate with Abhi, the music which can take you into the different experience of lucid dreaming. And if you control that experience, it's called astral travel. The sixth body is called causal body. Very important. The causal body is like a template which stays and gives you multiple lifetimes. So think about all the karmas are stored in your causal body in Akashic records. And people who have the ability to read those, they can go on your Akashic records and read these karmic impressions. The Pralabdha karma, the Kriyaman karma, and Sanchit karma. We'll go into these topics in detail in another video. But for now, you can just understand that you can go through past life regression and tap into the causal body, your causal body, and you can remember things which you taught yourself in the past birth. For example, there are some people who come out of these regression therapies and they all of a sudden know how to play a piano or how to do a physical yoga exercise because they trained themselves in the past birth, and now that memory just got activated through the causal body. And beyond the causal body level is the bliss body, the spiritual body. So the important thing is not to get stuck in the name. The nomenclatures might be different in different explanations, and some might describe the bodies at 5, some 7, some do it as 9. But the important thing to know is that we have a physical body which we are aware of through our senses, and there is a lot of other dimension beyond the physical bodies. Now you can call them as subtle bodies and this as a gross body, or you can start describing them for the mind to understand how the enlightenment process can go.